The issue of benefit fraud and the staggeringly large sum attached to it in figures given to Checkpoint today, a total of $182 million owed by former and current clients who've defrauded the system, is under discussion tonight. Experts in the field are surprised the figure is so high, and they're also surprised beneficiaries owe a total of almost $1.3 billion to WINS. Now, some of that is recoverable assistance, the kind of loans and advances we've looked at over the past few weeks associated with emergency housing, money borrowed from WINS that has to be repaid, even though most of the people who borrowed it are very low income. But if the issue of fraud-related debt, that the lawyer Catriona MacLennan is interested in, she's written a report commissioned by the Child Poverty Action Group, pointing out the flaws in how the government punishes women convicted of relationship fraud. It cites one example, Catherine, whose infant son was killed by her partner. While she was on the solo parents benefit, then the TBP, she had another relationship, but Catherine claims the man came and went, and they weren't in a de facto marriage. And when she ended it for fear he was abusing her children, well, he told MSD they were together and had her convicted for a relationship fraud. She went to prison, and when she got out, MSD still pursued their money at great expense. More details on Catherine coming up, but Catriona MacLennan says Catherine's struggle speaks of a punitive and unrealistic attitude to solo mothers in particular, and it's all too common.
Well, I actually have had a work and income employee say to me about one of my clients, she shouldn't have been having sex when she was on the DPB, as it was then called. So that's a pretty astonishing attitude, isn't it?
So the DPB is now the SPS.
Yeah.
And in order to get the SPS, you have to be sole. You have to be a sole parent.
Yeah.
But when do you stop being a sole parent? Do you stop being a sole parent because you've had a fling, because you've met someone on a Saturday? How does that work?
Yeah, it's actually incredibly complicated. So there's been problems with this test for over 2 decades. What you have to be is not in a relationship in the nature of marriage. And you can tell by the number of those words that it's obviously a complicated legal test. And the other problem is that relationships are fluid. You know, you meet someone, you start going out, and you start having sex, but when is that in law a relationship in the nature of marriage? But the problem for these mums is that on the day that work and income says it's a relationship in the nature of marriage, boom, you're not entitled to the benefit, and your partner is supposed to support you and the children.
Okay, some of these relationships won't be in the nature of marriage at all. Some of these relationships will be very difficult and dysfunctional, and they will be with men who are not caregivers, who are not providing income. Yeah. But even in those circumstances, does the sole mum forfeit her benefit?
It's very complicated, and listeners might recall the Rooker case in the 1990s, which went to the Court of Appeal, and Isabella was subjected to extreme violence for years throughout the relationship, and the Court of Appeal said if there was that level of violence and no emotional and financial support from the man, it was not a relationship in the nature of marriage. But work and income kept applying the law as they had been before that, and there was then a report 2 years later which found up to 15,600 cases should be reviewed because women had had their benefits wrongly cancelled.
Okay, the classic example that you are discussing now is Catherine's story. How much money has been spent pursuing Catherine for having obtained a benefit that she wasn't entitled to?
Well, it's well over $100,000. So $11,000 was spent to prosecute and convict her of benefit fraud. And since then, Crown Law has spent approximately $83,000 on legal fees. And we don't know the figure for MSD, and obviously it's the main government agency pursuing her. So they would have also spent tens of thousands pursuing her for 15 years to get back money she can never repay. And in that time, they've got back $1,630 from her.
So what needs to happen? Because on behalf of the taxpayer, there has to be some certainty that the people getting the money are entitled to it. But there also has to be an acknowledgement of the fluid nature of human existence and also the vulnerability of many of these women and their children. How do we achieve that balancing act?
Well, I think first of all, if we made benefits that it was an individual entitlement, we would take that problem away. We should stop sending mums on benefits to jail for benefit fraud, you're just punishing the children and wrecking their lives. And we should do what we do in all other parts of our criminal justice system. When people are convicted and sentenced, the judge looks at that person's financial situation and considers how much can they reasonably repay within a few years, and at most it would be 5 years, and the judge does not order fines or reparation that are more than that. Whereas these women, many of whom have served jail sentences, come out of jail and MSD pursues them for the rest of their lives for this money. And the government is very keen that beneficiaries get jobs and become self-sustaining. But of course, if those women get a job, she's not going to be any better off, because working income will then just increase the amount they're taking from her each week to recover the debt.